Pleasant good evening and a hearty welcome to News R. In this edition, a conference by the foreign ministers of C10 countries begins in Freetown. First Lady Fatima Bio launches the Hands of Our Girls campaign, and a citizens' perception survey on social services for persons with disabilities indicates that majority of public structures do not have disabled-friendly pathways. Well, these stories and more are lined up in this edition of News R. I am Alice Mayama Thompson. Stay with me. Welcome back. And first in the news tonight, President Bio has opened a conference for the foreign ministers of the C10 countries. The conference on the reformation of the United Nations Security Council is ongoing at the Radisson Blu Hotel, Freetown. President Bio, as chairman of the committee of C10, called on African leaders to remain focused in the drive to ensure that the continent has the 2 seats in the United Nations Security Council.
The ministerial meeting will finalize and adopt a draft recommendation for the consideration by the presidents of the C10 countries. In his keynote address, the C10 coordinator, President Julius Maada Bio, stated that the representatives are in Sierra Leone because they are charged with a common purpose and have a shared agenda for a common goal. The president noted that the current geopolitical realities have placed Africa in a stronger position than ever before to demand a representation in the United Nations Security Council.
We are here charged with a common purpose. We have a shared agenda for a common goal. We are here because we believe that the current geopolitical realities have placed Africa in a particularly stronger position than ever before to present a common position for a comprehensive reform of the Security Council and to call for equitable representation in all organs of the United Nations.
President Bio argued that Africa is the only region without representation in the Security Council. President Bio said Africa's demands for 2 permanent seats, including the rights of veto through Africa, is opposed to the principle of veto, and 2 additional non-permanent seats are matters of common justice.
We further argue that Africans constitute 1.2 billion of the world's population of 7.5 billion, and about 70% of the decisions made at the United Nations Security Council ultimately affect the 1.2 billion Africans. Those 1.2 billion people are also affected by over 70% of the United Nations resolutions. Africa is also contributing more than its fair share to promoting world peace and security.
The C10 coordinator highlighted that the participants should look at strategic pathways that they can adopt to further canvass, advance, and promote the common African position. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Dr. Ali Kaba, said as ministers, they will examine the present state of the intergovernmental negotiation process on the reform of the United Nations Security Council. Dr. Kaba commended the different representatives for coming to participate in the interministerial meeting in Sierra Leone.
Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the task that we have at hand over the next 2 days of deliberation is to prepare for the 5th C10 Consultative Summit expected to be held early next year. As was communicated by His Excellency President Julius Maada Bio to his colleagues, the main objectives of our meeting include: A. Examine the present state of play of the intergovernmental negotiation process on the reform of the United Nations Security Council, and develop ideas on how to further canvass, advance, and promote the common African position. B. Consider the outcome of the ambassadorial and expert level retreat held in New York in April 2018, which encompasses 1. An aid memoir for the C10 heads of state to engage with D5 members, that's permanent members of the Security Council.
SABC TV News are in Freetown. How Musiri reporting.
The First Lady, Fatima Bio, has launched the Hands of Our Girls campaign at the Bintamani Hotel in Freetown. The First Lady's initiative from all forms of abuse as they grow up to realize their full potentials and contribute meaningfully to society. The luncheon was witnessed by other First Ladies in West Africa. Princess Gibson reports.
President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, Your Excellencies, my dear sisters and First Ladies of Africa, from Liberia, Ghana, Chad, Niger, and the Gambia, the Chief Minister, the Secretary to OCLA, all mayors here present, representatives of ECOWAS, paramount chiefs and the wives of paramount chiefs, ministers here present, members of the diplomatic and consular corps, members of the Fourth Estate, my honorable sponsors, members of parliament, good afternoon, and welcome to our beloved country, Sierra Leone. Early marriage, teenage pregnancies, rape, child prostitution, gender-based violence against women have to be looked into by everyone in this country. Because of the above issues, we have a considerable number of people affected by HIV/AIDS, fistula, infertility, and the highest rate of infant and child mortality in the world. The government of Sierra Leone, led by His Excellency the President, Julius Maada Bio, are now very determined to formulate our own solution to the unique problem we faced. We have every reason and highly motivated to see that the work is done. Working together, we have shown that we have the capacity to mobilize and to face our problem head-on. We are taking charge as we make use of our first-hand experience to proffer appropriate programs that will be effective. The concept of Africa Solution is meant to evoke a sense of self-reliance, responsibility, pride, and ownership amongst all Africa. We should have primary responsibility for the solution of these issues affecting our women and children. We should take the lead in responding to them. This is because we have a compelling interest in the development and growth of our great continent. We know about figures, all First Ladies, we know statistics, but we are also mothers, and we also face the reality on the ground.
Everyone must come on board. We have with us First Ladies from across.
The European Union mission to Sierra Leone has welcomed, as part of its agenda for free speech, the repeal of the 1965 Public Order Act, as promised by President Julius Maada Bio. Ambassador Tom Vance made this statement during an annual working lunch held with journalists to expand on the European Union's activities in Sierra Leone. The lunch meet was held at the Balmaya Arts Gallery restaurant at Congo Cross in Freetown. Ransford Kabia reports.
The meeting was to meet the press, which it values highly as partners in development. The European Union ambassador Tom Vance pointed out that the repeal of the 1965 Public Order Act is a recommendation that futures...
Well, we'll bring you that item later on in a subsequent bulletin. A citizens' perception survey on social services for persons with disabilities has indicated that the majority of public structures access for persons with disabilities. At a presentation of findings and the recommendations to the disabled community, the call for free medical for persons with disabilities was made loud and clear. Ibrahim Samura reports.
The report says this condition is particularly so with health centers in selected wards and chiefdoms in the eastern and western regions, where the survey was done by Sabi and Sen Sierra Leone, conducted in June and July 2018. The health facilities were generally described as difficult to reach, with barriers ranging from bad roads to lack of transportation. According to the findings, 47% of respondents who had visited those health facilities for treatment prior to the survey said the structures are not friendly for persons with disabilities. Program Officer Sabi Aliu Mara said they conducted the survey to promote dialogue between citizens and state actors to seek durable solutions to improve social services for persons with disabilities. He said Sabi is a citizen-led accountability program implemented in all districts across the country, saying that it advocates for better service delivery for social protection. Country Director Sem Sierra Leone Joseph Ayamga said the country's educational, health, social institutions and service provisions channels are not made accessible to persons with disabilities. He encouraged disabled persons to rise up and stop begging on the streets, but rather made their concerns known to the government.
Children with disabilities are almost 4 times more likely to experience violence than non-disabled children. 80% of all people with disabilities live in a developing country. 50% of disabled persons cannot afford health care, and many more are still unable to access quality education.
In their contributions, the persons with disability called for inclusive access to medical facilities and education in the country as enshrined in the Persons with Disability Act of 2011. According to the United Nations, over 1 billion people in the world have some form of disability, and that more than 100 million disabled persons are children. Ibrahim Samura, Freetown.
The Sierra Leone Educational Partnership has awarded scholarships to 150 students of the Canadian College of Modern Technology. The scholarship package, which targeted less privileged students, includes tuition fees, laptops, and food. The event took place at the Canadian College of Modern Technology campus, Mile 91, Tekolili District. Joseph Toure has the report.
Young people constitute a greater proportion of the country's population, but most of them have been facing serious challenges, including limited finance in pursuing their education, especially at tertiary level. The scholarship scheme is designed to help the underprivileged students to further their studies, build on the human capital, and improve on their life skills. The chairperson of the Sierra Leone Educational Partnership Scholarship Scheme, Gillian Houghton, urged the students to work very hard and take advantage of the scholarship. She motivated them by sharing a personal testimony of her academic struggle, but was able to overcome and succeed. Gillian Houghton called on the students and beneficiaries to maintain the facilities of the college and strive for excellence.
So whatever you do in life, when you get up in the morning, it is a process. But it's also a process at school. And the process is very simple. And if you do these consistently every day, then you will succeed.
The chairman, Board of Directors, Canadian College of Modern Technology, Muxin Sisay, called on the students to deviate from bad practices including absenteeism, negative association, adding that they should be disciplined in their academic pursuits. One of the beneficiaries, Aissatou Koroma, shared a testimony of a struggle in life when she lost both parents and her sister, who were her caregivers. She appreciated the benefactors, noting that the scholarship scheme has helped her to regain hope. It is expected of these students who are pursuing their diploma and degree courses to grasp the opportunity so that they will be the pillar to support their families and benefit the country as a whole. For SLBC, Joseph Toure reporting.
The European Union mission to Sierra Leone has welcomed as part of its agenda for free speech the repeal of the 1965 Public Order Act, as promised by President Julius Maada Bio. Ambassador Tom Vance made the statement during an annual working lunch held with journalists to expand on the European Union's activities in Sierra Leone. The lunch meet was held at the Balmaya Arts Gallery at Congo Cross in Freetown. Here's the report.
The meeting was to meet the press, which it values highly as partners in development. The European Union ambassador, Tom Vance, pointed out that the repeal of the 1965 Public Order Act is a recommendation that features now and then in the EU Observer Elections Mission report, while recognizing the challenges faced by journalists whom he termed as defenders of human rights when executing their work. Mr. Vance welcomed recommendations made recently on gender-based violence, an issue that is held seriously by the EU in prioritizing women and girls, citing a video clip it developed recently to raise awareness on the topic. It said the EU is working as partners with the government, civil society and the media, and increasingly with the private sector to address issues and dimensions through dialogue, which is evident in the recent visit of President Julius Maada Bio to Brussels. Both Sierra Leone and the European Union, the EU ambassador said, must attract more investments and address barriers that impede such in order to create jobs, skills development, education, and creating stronger regional markets. All these based on the Africa-Europe Alliance recently launched in the wake of the UN General Assembly by EU President Jean-Claude Juncker. Ambassador Tom Vance said the EU, on its part, strongly put forward to the government of President Bio the issue of working together in a multilateral context on issues such as climate change, good governance and migration, and those recommendations of the EU Elections Observer Mission is implemented. The meeting in Brussels, it said, talked about cooperation between Sierra Leone and the EU, with President Bio explaining the logic of the new direction with priorities on education and job creation, to which the EU has created a project titled Jobs and Growth. Concluding, the EU ambassador Tom Vance said that the European Union is open and always keen to engage with the media and values highly the media's dissemination of its activities. Ransford Kabia, SLBC News.
The remains of Cedric James McFoy have been laid to rest at the Ascension Town Cemetery. As Patrick Salia reports, James McFoy died on his birthday at the Freetown Amusement Park on Saturday, 24th November 2018.
The family still beckons for justice to the death of Cedric James McFoy, as the mother, Jean Cole, was conspicuously absent at the funeral because she obviously cannot stand it to endure such pain in the heart for her second son. At the St. Anthony's Church, parish priest Father Patrick Legend George entreated the congregation of mourners and sympathizers that the word of God should be used as a consolation, adding that all glory belongs to God, and that according to the book of Job, the naked way a man comes into the world, so shall he return. All things, he noted, are possible, being with God, who helps anything when called upon in prayers.
We are here in order to share our sorrow. It is a sad moment to lose a 12-year-old. It is a sad moment for us to lose a friend, a son, a brother in the faith. But if we take everything to the Lord in prayer, God will help us. That is why we sing that song. What a friend we have in Jesus. Jesus is our friend. All our sins, all our grief, Jesus can bear them.
The funeral of the 12-year-old boy, whose death has been questioned by the family and other members of the public, received an overwhelming attendance and solemnity from the family, public, and his aunt's, Princess Macaulay's workplace, the Army, including his former school, Blessing Children's Center and Primary School. If not for his death, Cedric James McFoy was highly expected will have stepped into secondary school by next academic year. Head teacher Issa Bangura has a special but strong message for the state institutions and officials in charge of children's affairs.
Do something. Protect our children from going missing, never to be seen again. 6. Do something. Prevent our children from mental, domestic, sexual, and emotional abuse, which come about as a result of bullying, etc. 7. Get those child protection policies off our sleeves. I am pleading with you to do something and act now. For now is the time for you to do something.
The grief for him is heavy, and the flow of tears down the cheeks as the good memories of what many have described as a promising boy can't be resisted.
Family members, relatives and friends have cried and cannot stop crying here at the graveside of the late James Cedric McFoy as his remains go below the ground. No one, or hardly anyone, can stand the test of not shedding tears. It is really a true demonstration of the heart that knows the sorrow of parting. Vengeance is being requested by the family members here for the late boy to seek.
The Ministry of Information and Communications and stakeholders have concluded a 3-day session on the drafting of legislation to combating cybercrime in the country. The Deputy Minister of Information and Communications, Solomon Jamiu, said laws on cybercrime will benefit Sierra Leone immensely. He made the statement to SLBC's Joseph Toure.
Cybercrime is a global threat, and Sierra Leone as part of the global village, and for the past 3 days, stakeholders in the ICT world have discussed issues relating to combating cybercrime in Sierra Leone.
Thank you very much. We've been here at the Radisson Blu for the past 3-4 days to have a framework document that seeks to address cybercrimes. And so it's important that in moving forward, we'll be working closely with the Office of Attorney General and Minister of Justice to ensure that we have a bill in place that will be tabled in Parliament. So there are a few things that have spoken to the issue. One is we have looked at important international documents relating to cyber crimes. We bear in mind the Budapest Convention of 2001, the Malabo Convention, as well as the ECOWAS Directive on Cyber Crimes. So we have looked at those important pieces of documents, but also we are fully aware that we also, within our domestic context, we have certain relevant laws that we have to look at. What we don't want to do at the end of the day is to have a specific legislation and provisions there potentially or existentially run in conflict with other laws. And we also bear in mind that it's very important to protect the privacy of people. And so at the end of the day, we have realized that cyber crimes are real. There has to be a specific legislation that speaks to that, but we're also fully aware that we have to create a balancing act. Whilst we're trying to criminalize cyber crimes and also having some penal positions in that direction, we have to fully understand that we must not do anything that jeopardizes the privacy and the fundamental human rights of persons. Well, I think Sierra Leone is part of the global community. If we ask the question, is cybercrime real? Yes, it is real. Is the globe threatened by cyber crimes? Yes, they are. I mean, we see United States of America and Russia, accusations and counter-accusations, mutual suspicion and mutual mistrust, and all of that. Banks are threatened, the financial sector is threatened, security agencies are threatened all over the world, the airport needs it, immigration needs it, and so it's very important that we have a framework, a legislation in place that seeks to address cyber crimes. And so Sierra Leone, being part of the world, has made the resolution that we have to catch up with the rest of the world. And for countries to know that we are very serious in fighting cyber crimes, one of the hallmarks is to have a specific legislation that speaks to it. And so that is one of the deliverables. And my boss, the Minister Mohamed Rado Soare, is in Israel. But before he left, his directive to me was very clear, very unambiguous, that we have to pull this off. And I am pleased to report to Sierra Leoneans that the past 3-4 days have been very hectic but very rewarding. Now we have a framework, now we have a working document to work on, and the rest would be done internally between ourselves and the Office of Attorney General and Minister of Justice.
Well, with that item, News Hour comes to a close, but before we go, quick look at the top stories. A conference by the foreign ministers of C10 countries has begun in Freetown. First Lady Fatima Bio has launched the Hands of Our Girls campaign, and a citizens' perception survey on social services for persons with disabilities has indicated that majority of public structures do not have disabled-friendly pathways. Well, that's all in this edition of News Hour. I am Alice Mariama Thompson. Thanks for your time. Good night.